Good morning, everyone. Or good evening for those down under. Like Linda, top of the evening to you all. It's 10:15 in the AM here in the UK. It's a little bit nippy. Can you believe this? Right, it's June. It's June the 5th. And it hailstormed this morning. Can you believe it? I've never seen the like before of the weather that we're having. It's insane. What's going on with the weather? I went out this morning and it looked overcast. Right, looked overcast, and it started hailstorming. Only for a few minutes, and it stopped, and it's brightening up now. But still, bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Never seen the like of it before. I've seen snow in May, I think once, but hailstorms in June, no, that's new to me. And I've been on this planet for quite a while, and I've never seen hailstorms in June before. Crazy days. Anyhow, yes, there is 2 lives in a row today. So I think I've set up a redirect. So instead of just doing this in one continuous live stream, I'm going to be doing Delphi for the next hour and a half. And then it should, for those interested, redirect you over to a live on Sebastian Rogers, on the Sebastian Rogers case, which will be in an hour and a half. So I think we can get this done easily in an hour and a half, unless I rant. If I start ranting, then the next live will be late. But because they're 2 separate subjects, completely different subjects, and probably largely different audiences, then I thought instead of just doing Delphi and then going straight into Sebastian Rogers, it makes more sense to set up 2 live streams, like each with its own title. So that's what's going to happen. So when we finish here, it should redirect you over to the waiting room of the next live stream if you're interested in both cases. So that's what I've done. I think I've done it right. I've never done a redirect before. So if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's as simple as that. But it will just be on the channel as an upcoming live stream. So if it doesn't redirect you over, just go and find it on the channel in the Sebastian Rogers playlist. So I've got a Sebastian Rogers playlist, or you can find it in the live streams playlist. So, all right. Anyway, we're here to talk about the Delphi case. And there have been a few new court filings. They're not absolutely new. This is not breaking news. These have been out for a couple of days now, but it's just taken me that long to get around to it. I've got kind of a lot going on in my life. Not bad stuff. I just have other commitments at the moment. And the Sebastian Rogers case is taking up so much of my time. And then I've got to fit stuff around the Karen Reid trial, because I'm obsessed with Karen Reid. It's been easier than I anticipated to fit stuff around the Karen Reid trial because they have so much time off. I've never known a trial like it. I think we're in week 6 of the Karen Reid trial, but only on like day 20. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. It's as bizarre as hailstones in June. Anyway, good morning to everyone. Hope you're all doing well. You have been spoiled. You have been spoiled. Insomnia. Oh, I have that. I have that quite a lot. It's 11:15 in South Africa and chilly. I don't think of South Africa as being chilly, but then again, I've never been, so what do I know? K9 Dream Dog from Melbourne. Long Beach, California, 2:16 a.m. I'm guessing that you've not been to bed yet, or you're a very early riser. Anyhow, right. So the 2 court filings that I'm going to focus on are these 2. So this is just short, like less than 4 lines. Yeah, just 4 lines. And then the longer one, which is Judge Francis Gull replying to the second motion that the defence have filed to get the judge to recuse herself. And surprise, surprise, she's denied it. But hey, what can you do? The question is, what are the defence going to do about it? That's the question. But we'll do this one first, 4 lines. And this is the judge's response to the filing that was done by David Hennessy. David Hennessy is the attorney for both defence attorneys. Because in this case, the attorneys have attorneys. The judge has an attorney. It's insane. So David Hennessy is working on behalf of Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin. You'll know that if you've been following the case, that David Hennessy occasionally files stuff. When all the Supreme Court thing was going on, David Hennessy was filing a lot. David Hennessy is an old dog in this game, right? Very, very experienced. So he doesn't shy away from a fight, shall we say? Doesn't shy away from a fight. So he filed on behalf of Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin to have the judge take out some of the, shall we say, less professional comments. So when she did her response to Nick McClelland, the prosecutor, filing for a contempt of court judgment, and they had that hearing, like holding Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin in contempt. Right? They couldn't disqualify them. That didn't work. So they went down the contempt route. But the judge didn't find them in contempt. She didn't find that Nick had proven his case against Brad and Andy. But in her filing, and we did go through this on the channel, she put in some, in my opinion, unprofessional language, calling them things like sloppy. It sounded more like just her personal opinion. She doesn't like these two guys, and she seeps her personal opinion into these court filings, and it's out of order. And David Hennessy filed for her just to remove those words, that those words don't stand on the record because they're unprofessional. But she's denied that. The court has reviewed defence counsel's petition to strike gratuitous and demeaning commentary and or findings from the contempt order, which was filed on May the 8th. As the court granted Counsel Hennessy's motion for specific findings of fact and conclusions thereon, filed March the 12th, this motion is denied. She shouldn't be a judge. She should consider her career choices and recuse herself from this case. But she's not going to. I've never thought, like, Brad and Andy have tried twice now for her to recuse herself, and she just won't. She just won't. So the question is, what is she going to do about it? So that brings us on to the second. It's only 6 pages, but more substantial filing from Francis. And this is in response to the defence's second motion to have the judge disqualify herself. And she's denied that. But she has responded. So we're going to go through. And if I start ranting, I'm going to try and hold myself back because I'm just sick of this woman. I feel that this woman takes up too much space in my brain. But at the same time, I can't stop looking. It's like a car crash scene, you know, where everybody, if you see a crash on the side of the road and everybody, you know, driving by starts rubbernecking and trying to kind of, you know, watch what's going on as you pass by. I kind of feel like that. I feel like we're all stuck in this Groundhog Day experience where we're all witnessing this car crash going on in the court filings. It's absolutely bizarre. Bizarre. Never seen a case like this. It's I don't know what the world is coming to. We've got hailstones in June. We've got a judge who is clearly biased. And look, I've said this again and again and again, and I will continue to say it. This is not about Richard Allen's guilt or innocence. Constitutionally, of course, Richard Allen, who will have been sitting in a state prison for 2 years by the time this gets to trial now. State prison, the only unconvicted person in a state prison. Westville, and then he's now in Wabash. But 2 years, this man will have sat there, constitutionally innocent, being mistreated, completely mistreated. And it's gone beyond whether or not Richard Allen is factually guilty or factually innocent. I honestly don't know. I err to the, given all the just on the nonsense that's gone on, I err on the side that he's actually innocent and he's been set up in some way and the prosecutor's going along with it. That's what I err towards, because I've never seen, if there wasn't monkey business going on, why would they have gone to all of these lengths? You know, if they actually had a strong case against Richard Allen, surely they wouldn't have gone through this rigmarole of, you know, disqualifying the defense attorneys. They'd have just gone to trial. This should have gone to trial in January. It would have gone to trial in January had it not been for Nick McClelland and Francis Gull with all this monkey business, disqualifying Brad and Andy over next to nothing, and then wasting a bunch of time on the contempt hearing. It's absolutely, it's just nonsense, complete nonsense. Yeah, Linda, there is another live stream scheduled as well, yeah. Different subject. It's on Sebastian Rogers. I didn't want to combine them into one live stream because they're completely different subjects and probably different audiences. Exactly. Lovely lyrics. It's a shame to see the justice system in this condition. Absolutely. And if this trial had gone, you know, it had gone to trial in January when it should have done, if there hadn't been that monkey business in October, it'd have all been done and dusted by now. It would have been either the state proved their case against Richard Allen and they brought out all the evidence and the evidence was sufficient that a jury convicted him and, you know, the dude's guilty and he's been rightfully convicted. Well, that's one thing. But all these shenanigans lead me to believe that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we know about. And it leads me to believe that the state doesn't have a case, that it's having to do all of these underhand tactics to keep Richard Allen in prison so that hopefully he'll top himself or something. And then they don't have to go to trial. They can just say, oh, look, he's topped himself because he's guilty. And that'll be it. They'll draw a line under it. But no, there's things in this case that go way beyond whether Richard Allen is factually guilty or factually innocent. And it's just heartbreaking to see the case descend into anarchy. And the only rightful thing that the judge can do, surely, is recuse herself, but she won't. And it leads me into this rabbit hole of who's she being paid off by? What is going on? What really is going on here? And I don't normally descend into conspiracy theories. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that kind of channel. But in this case, I have no choice than to consider the possibility that there is a lot more going on here than a conviction against Richard Allen. So I err on the side that Richard is actually factually innocent, or else why all these shenanigans? But I want to see the evidence. I want to see the trial. And we're not going to see the trial because she refuses to have cameras in the courtroom. She refuses to allow the press to stream it audio only or record it audio only and then, stream it later after the fact. Like with Laurie Vallow, they recorded the audio, but then it kind of came out after. I'd have been fine with that. But no. She's letting injustice be done in the dark here, and that in itself is questionable. But that's her choice. She has the right of the judge to decide whether or not she allows cameras in the courtroom. But I want to see the evidence. I want to see what evidence the state have got against Richard Allen, and I want to see how the defence handles that. But justice feels very, very far away now in this case. Very far away. And I don't feel that we're going to see a trial anytime soon. It's going to be October at the very least, but even that might get pushed back. I could see it being continued again. I could see there being more shenanigans nearer the time, and they're forced to push it back yet again. Awful situation for Richard Allen, for his family, but probably more important than anybody is Abby and Libby. Where's the justice for Abby and Libby and their families? Where is that? The families have been living through this horror for over 7 years. Abby and Libby were murdered on February 13th, 2017. And it's going to be the end of 2024 by the time a trial comes. And then I could see, if this judge doesn't recuse herself, I can see appeal after appeal after appeal. If Richard is convicted in October, if she continues these shenanigans throughout the trial, and there's no reason to suggest that she won't, given her current record of how she's handling this case, the families will be pushed through the appellant court. No, I don't think you're on a downer, Irene. I don't think this will be solved. I think there'll be a trial eventually. There has to be, unless Rick Allen tops himself. But anyhow, let's read this. So the court has reviewed the defence second verified motion to disqualify judge and request for findings of fact and conclusions of law upon denial of this request, if this court denies this request, filed May 17th, 2024. Now, what they've said in their motion was that the judge has to provide evidence, provide the law upon which, her decision should be based upon, because they've requested that because she's just very, very good at denying their motions and just saying denied without hearing, offering 4 lines like she did here. That's a usual Francis Gull response, that she just says denied, and she doesn't say why. She doesn't give any explanation. She doesn't include any law that will back her up. No, she just denies without hearing. And she's done that again, because she said as trial rule 52 is not applicable in criminal cases, the defendant's request for findings of fact and conclusions of law is denied. So she's claiming, based on this case, Neely versus State from 1973 and Davis versus State in 1994, based on those cases, she's stating that she doesn't have to provide any evidence from law. Okay. But what she is going to do, however, is address each of the defendant's allegations. So at least we get, something. But once again, it's just her opinion. It's just descended into her opinion rather than it being based on law. It's based on her opinion. So defendant claims the court directed the Carroll County Sheriff to ignore a subpoena. Well, that's exactly what she did. She ignored the subpoena to have Robert Baston appear at the hearing in June of last year, because Robert Baston, an inmate at Westville, according to the defence, could provide evidence that Richard Allen, amongst other people, was being mistreated at Westville. And he refused. He said, no, I don't want to. He'd been subpoenaed. He should have been forced to, but he didn't want to because he knew that it was going to be worse for him in Westville. So you can't blame the guy. But at the same time, it's absolutely the case that the judge just said, oh, it's okay if he doesn't want to come, don't make him. It's fine. It's fine. The court directed an email to counsel on June 14th regarding the witness refusing to cooperate with the service of the subpoena and demonstrating a willingness to fight the deputy attempting service. So, he's going to fight back. Oh, it's very scary. Well, they're very happy to tase Richard Allen for no reason. So this dude's a convicted felon. He's under subpoena. If he starts to fight them, well, I think they could probably subdue him. So he's going to fight the deputy. All right, well, they've got all the shackles and the lap belt and the shock collar and whatever else they've got. So that's a stupid excuse. The court requested a report of the witness's refusal to cooperate and be transported for the scheduled hearing and forwarded that report to counsel when it was received. The decision by the deputy to leave without the witness was his and not directed by the court. No. She said, we've got the paperwork. We've got the paperwork. I could dig it out. I haven't done, but I could dig it out. We've got the paperwork that they said, what do you want us to do about this? This dude doesn't want to leave. He doesn't want to leave his cell. What do you want us to do about it? So it wasn't the deputy who made that decision. They were like, well, what should we do about it? This dude doesn't want to come. So is she okay? Right, let's take the fact that this dude, Robert Baston, is an inmate. Let's just assume that this is just any random person who's subpoenaed to appear, right, and they don't want to. And there's, a deputy turns up to go and get them, and they say, I'm not coming. I'm going to fight you. I'm going to fight you. Is it like, oh, that's okay then? Is that how it works now? Is that how it works in Indiana? That you can just say, oh, I'm just going to ignore the subpoena. I'm going to tell them I'm going to fight them, and then I don't have to go. Is that how this works? No, that's not how this works. But in this case, that's exactly how it worked. Defendant claims the court engaged in ex parte communication with the Carroll County Sheriff regarding defendant's housing, transportation, and safety during jury. Oh, we've moved on. So this is now about the Oh, no, maybe not. We'll just keep reading. Defendant claimed the court engaged in ex parte communication with the Carroll County Sheriff regarding defendant's housing, transportation and safety during jury selection for the trial May 13th to 31st. These communications were administrative in nature and did not address any substantive issues. So she's admitted to ex parte communications. Like, she's not meant to have ex parte communications with the other side. Right? She's not meant to, talk to the other side without counsel being informed of it, without counsel being in the email chain. So she's admitted. She's admitted to ex parte communications. It doesn't matter what the content was. The fact it doesn't address any substantive issues is her opinion. To the defense, it might be a substantive issue. Just because she says, in her opinion, it was administrative. Well, okay, if it was administrative and it wasn't substantive, well, why didn't you just copy the defense in to those communications? You've admitted it, Francis. You've admitted to ex parte communications. The communications were directed to where the defendant would be housed during the trial and who would be conducting transportation. So it has moved on. So the Robert Baston issue, she's just denied that it was anything to do with her. So she has moved on. The decision by the deputy to leave without the witness was his and not directed by the court. So, but still, he was under subpoena. So what was done to the deputy who decided to ignore a correctly issued subpoena? Not that it was the deputy's fault, but that's an out and out lie. That's a flat out lie. A flat out lie. Anyway, and this, she's admitted to ex parte communications. The court did notify counsel where defendant would be housed during the trial, yet after the fact. The point is, she decided, had communications with law enforcement and decided where Richard Allen would be housed during the trial without any contact, without any consideration of factoring the counsel in to those correspondence. That's the point. And then after the fact, after she'd had these ex parte communications, then she notified counsel where Richard Allen was going to be housed. Awful. So the court did notify counsel where defendant would be housed during the trial, as he is still under the safekeeping order, in an email, but did not inform counsel of the communication as nothing substantive was discussed. Once again, she's admitted to ex parte communications, and the definition of substantive is irrelevant. It's still ex parte communications. They should have been copied in. It's an email. How long does it take you to copy in 2 extra names into, the address bar? The court has set the defendant's motion to vacate safekeeping order for hearing, but it was required to cancel the hearing upon the filing of this pending second verified motion to disqualify. Yeah, she was. Counsel claimed the court invited the state to limit defendant's Sixth Amendment right to present a defence. The court has always required counsel in all criminal cases to follow the law relating to third-party perpetrators. The court reminded counsel of their obligation to follow the law in the court's email, April 28th, 2024. But the law is that a defendant is allowed to put forward a third-party guilt defence. And if they're flat out not allowed, and Nick McClellan gets his wish, that at the trial, they're not even allowed to mention the names of Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Elvis Fields. They're not allowed to utter the word Odinism absolutely 100% limits Richard Allen from providing his own defense. Well, it looks to me like she's gonna go with what Nick suggests. It seems to me like the defense aren't going to be allowed to put forward a third-party guilt defense. That's what it's looking like to me. So the state can put together as much evidence as they want, but yet the defense is not actually allowed to defend their client. All they can do is cross-examine Nick's witnesses. That's it. That's how it's looking like it's going to go. Which is why she thinks the trial can be done in 2 weeks. That's what it looks like to me. So we'll wait and see what happens. I might be wrong. I hope I am. Counsel claimed the court has disparaged them and ruled on defence pleadings without hearings. Well, we've all seen it. We've all seen it. We've all seen what she said. She can't deny it. We've seen what she said. Do the defence have to prove the third party was at the crime scene? The defence don't have to prove anything. The defence don't have to prove anything, but they are allowed, if they so wish, to put forward a guilt involving third parties. You know, if you're following the Karen Reid trial, it's exactly how the defence are playing it in the Karen Reid trial. They're arguing that Karen is innocent because she didn't run over and kill John O'Keefe. But along with all of that, they're arguing that they know that other people were involved in his death. And it's all playing out in the courtroom. And they've not been stopped because they're allowed to. They're allowed to put forward a third-party guilt defence. Now, how far they go with it, you know, they can be reined in somewhat by the judge. But, I mean, look, in the opening statement, the defence in Karen Reid trial, you know, the first sentence in that opening statement was Karen Reid was set up. Or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. So for the first, 3 weeks of the trial, and it's actually only a few days, it's because they have so much time off, you know, Mr. Lally, the prosecutor, was effectively defending himself against the claims that he knew the defence were going to make. And they're allowed to do that. That's part of, if the defence so wishes, they're allowed to do that. Now, of course, it's a different state. You know, Karen Reid, it's a Massachusetts case, whereas this is an Indiana case. So, unfortunately, it appears that judges in Indiana are just allowed to do what they want. That's how it looks. Okay, the court's comments about counsel's performance was documented in the court order of April 30th, 2024, regarding their handling of discovery materials. If pleadings on their face are not supported by law or admissible evidence, judicial economy does not require a hearing. I mean, how many hearings have we had in this case? I mean, you could count on your fingers, probably of one hand, the amount of hearings we've had in this case. Now, juxtapose that with the amount of hearings that were had in the Karen Reid case. Juxtapose that with the amount of hearings that we're currently sitting through in the Brian Kohberger case. Look at how rigorous the defence are being in the Brian Kohberger case. And rightly so, they're questioning everything. The fact I don't agree with them, I personally believe that Brian Kohlberger is factually guilty, but he is innocent and until proven so in a court of law, and he is allowed, and I'm glad he's getting, even though I think he's guilty, a rigorous defence. I'm glad he is. I'm glad that Anne Taylor is questioning everything, because that's what a good defence counsel should do. Just imagine if Francis Gull was the judge presiding over the Brian Kohlberger case. And again, different state. But just imagine. She'd hit the roof and never come down again at the antics of Anne Taylor. But Anne Taylor is being rigorous. Anne Taylor is doing her job, and she's doing her job well. And she shouldn't be prevented from it. Doesn't matter whether you personally believe that Brian Kohlberger is factually guilty. You have to give the defence counsel credit for doing their job properly. So just imagine if Francis Gull was the judge presiding over Brian Kohlberger and she was dealing with Anne Taylor. Just imagine if she was the judge presiding over the Karen Reid trial and she had to deal with the might that is Yannetti and Jackson, because they're amazing. Imagine how she feel. Would she do the same kind of antics? Probably. But fortunately, not all judges are like her. You know, honestly, in the Kohlberger case, I wish Judge would be just a little bit more forceful. He's very passive. You know, he sits back and, you know, like, oh, he's very non-committal. I'd rather have that, though, than this. This isn't justice. This isn't justice. Anyway, allegations the court has treated the prosecution more favourably than the defence are unsupported by any admissible evidence provided by the defence at the March 18th, 2024 hearing. Okay. The court was notified on May 20th, 2024 of an inquiry by the Indiana State Police to the court reporter via email on May the 9th regarding ex parte communications received by the court from Gary Burdett, which was previously provided to all counsel. Now, Gary Burdett is Fig Solves. It's the YouTube channel Fig Solves. And it's being alleged that Gary Burdett and Nick McClelland have been talking to each other, and that Nick McClelland has been providing Gary Burdett with information. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but this is what's being alleged, and it appears that the Indiana State Police are looking into it, which I find very interesting. So there was an email on May the 9th, which was an inquiry by the Indiana State Police to the court reporter. So Indiana State Police emailed the court reporter on May the 9th regarding ex parte communications received by the court from Gary Burdett. But the court, was only notified of it 11 days later. So the email sat there for 11 days before she was notified of it. I don't know. But anyway, the court is unaware of the extent of any Indiana State Police investigation. All right. So is the Indiana State Police investigating Nick McClelland for partaking in ex parte communications? We know something has gone down, because we know Barbara MacDonald sat with the Odin report on Court TV in September. We know that the author Chris Todd had information about the crime scene as far back as December 2022. Once again, appearing on Court TV, claiming that he knew stuff about the crime scene, which, at least some of which, turns out to be true. So we know that there have been leaks, there have been communications that have gone on. Now, whether that's come directly from Nick McClelland to these people, I don't know. So I don't know whether Gary Burdett and Nick McClelland have been talking behind the scenes. and to what extent that has been. And I don't know, and Francis is claiming not to know either, whether there is actually an Indiana State Police investigation into it. If there is an Indiana State Police investigation, I would imagine that they're going to say, oh, we've not found any wrongdoing. You know, Nick's done nothing wrong. We'll wait and see, though. Defendant blames the court for ex parte pleadings, which were inadvertently directed to the prosecutor. The defense staff filed pleadings and marked them as confidential, apparently unaware that the confidential marking makes them available to the state, but not the public. So, do you remember this? Nick McClelland put in one of his filings some information from a psychologist that was in communication that was marked ex parte. So Nick McClelland inadvertently was so stupid to admit that he'd actually been looking at ex parte communications by the defense to the court. When it says ex parte, it means for one side only. It means Nick McClelland shouldn't have been looking at them at all. But now she's turning around and blaming the defense for filing stuff wrong. So the defense blames the court for ex parte pleadings, which were inadvertently directed to the prosecutor. So she's admitting that Nick McClelland got them, but it said on the top ex parte. So Nick McClelland, if he'd been getting that stuff, if the defense had been filing stuff incorrectly, and Nick was given that stuff, because it says ex parte on it, he should have raised the alarm. He should have said, look, I've got this stuff and it's ex parte. Why am I getting this stuff? He shouldn't have gone ahead and read it and then admitted he'd read it in a court filing. It's just laughable. It's laughable. So the defense staff filed pleadings and marked them confidential, apparently unaware that the confidential marking makes them available to the state but not to the public. Well, what about the term ex parte? Does Nick not understand that that legal term ex parte actually means something? Council staff contacted the court staff and were advised that the statewide Odyssey case management system, not DocsPop as alleged by in the pleading. I have no idea what that is. I mean, that must be just another system. As a distinct process for filing pleadings ex parte as opposed to confidential. The court did email defense counsel a tutorial paper. But not until, right, Nick had been reading these ex parte communications. So even if the defense were filing them incorrectly, Nick should have raised the alarm. Nick should have said, look, dude, I'm getting these ex parte communications. I shouldn't get these. He should have raised the alarm, not just read them and used them. So emailing the defense a tutorial paper is slamming the stable door once the horse has bolted. Exactly, Jenny. Put his knowledge of it in a filing. Exactly. And then he had to take that filing down and rewrite it and rewrite history. So they got a tutorial paper authored by JTAC, whoever that is, explaining the process. Since that communication, defense counsel have had no issues with their staff properly filing ex parte pleadings. Yes, well, that's great. That's great. You know, if their staff made the mistake assuming that when they were filing stuff confidentially, that it meant that it was ex parte, That was their misunderstanding. But once again, Nick should have raised the alarm. As soon as he got something, you know, ex parte, it said ex parte on it, he should have, at that very first time, should have said, I shouldn't be getting these. Can you please, you know, sort it out? How can you pass the bar or whatever you need to be when you don't know the basics? I know. Well, it's my opinion that he absolutely knows the basics, but was taking advantage of the fact that the Defence Counsel staff were filing stuff confidentially, assuming it was ex parte. He was taking advantage of being able to see those communications. Anyway, accusations of violating rules on access to court records have been completely explained and dealt with, including by the Indiana Supreme Court in the first writ of mandamus filed by the defense. So, yeah, that was all the nonsense about she was putting court filings in a Google Drive instead of on the system. So if anybody has messed up the court record, it's her. But that was dealt with. And it's done now. Counsel claim their motions are treated differently than those motions filed by the state. They are. They absolutely are. The court has set hearings on pending motions, which have now been continued due to the filing of this motion to disqualify. When defendant files pleadings, the state is entitled to file a response. The court follows Trial Rule 6 regarding time and gives the state 20 days to respond. Well, nobody's doubting that. Nobody's questioning that. The defence aren't saying, we've got a problem with the prosecutor responding. That's not their argument. The argument is that their motions are being treated differently than the prosecution's motions by her, not by the prosecution. Prosecution has the right to respond. Of course they do. The argument isn't with them. The argument is with her. That she, when the defence files a motion, she goes denied without hearing, regardless of what it is. Look at all the Franks motions they've put in. She's not had a hearing. She's not had a hearing to explore the possibility that they should have a Franks hearing. She hasn't. I truly don't believe that she's read any of those Franks motions. I truly believe it. I truly believe that she just puts them in the bin. Defendant is also given 20 days to reply to the state's responses. Once the issues are closed, if a hearing is required, one will be set. The problem is she won't set hearings. The problem is she just says denied without hearing. That's the problem. She's completely ignored that issue. Defendant asserts that the court ignored his request to set aside 2 weeks for the defence case, while refusing to set time limits on the prosecution. So this is regarding the time of the trial. On March the 6th, 2024, defendant filed a motion for speedy trial. The court granted the motion on March the 7th and set the case for speedy trial May 13th through 31st, 2024. On April 30th, defendant filed a motion for a pre-trial hearing, which the court set for hearing on May 7th. At no time prior to May 7th did defendant advise the court that 3 weeks for trial is inadequate. Well, actually, if you look back at the court correspondence, Brad Rosie actually did say, way back, Brad Rosie said that they needed more time for this trial. Way back, he said that. At no time prior to May the 7th did defendant advise the court that 3 weeks was inadequate. And 3 weeks, it wasn't 3 weeks, because 3 days out of that was going to be set for jury selection. So it was actually just a little over 2 weeks. I hope the Indiana Supreme Court is keeping an eye on this. I don't know. They're probably not, unless another, set of correspondence went in to them. I can't imagine that they're going to want to, micromanage Francis Gull, because the Supreme Court didn't find an issue with Francis. They didn't recuse her. They didn't find an issue with her. All right. They've basically given her power. She thinks she can do what she wants now. So at no time prior to May 7th did the defendant advise the court. Well, if we go back to the correspondence filed by Brad Rosie, I think he did. I'd have to check, but I distinctly remember that he did. At no time prior to May 7th did defendant indicate a belief that 3 additional weeks could be added to the trial without notice to the court, witnesses, and more importantly, without notice to potential jurors. While the court agrees a continuance of the trial is harmful to the defendant and the state, it could have been avoided had counsel communicated prior to May the 7th. Now, look, I think that they should have insisted. I think they should have been more forceful. I think they should have constantly harped on about it. That's what they didn't do. I think they should have done. I think they should have really, in every single filing, made it clear that they needed 2 weeks. They actually wanted 15 days to present their case. Now, I don't think that she's going to allow them to present their case, as I said before. If she grants what Nick wants and they're not allowed to mention the names Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Elvis Fields, Odinism, they're not allowed to use those words, and they'll be held in contempt if they use those words. Then they're not going to need 15 days. They're not. I think that's what she's going for. Blissful, thank you for gifting a membership. That's very kind of you. And Jill GZ has been gifted that. So welcome, Jill. You've got a month's free membership, courtesy of Blissful. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome. Oh, Jen, you gifted 10 memberships. Thank you. Thank you. Right, we've got Jodie, Rambling Rome, Ralph the Blind Pug, Emily, Michelle, great name, Crafty, Vicky, Rhonda, Leah, and Xena with Fire. Woohoo! Welcome, you guys. So 10 more members with a courtesy month. And thank you, Jen. Great stuff. Congratulations, everyone. All right, so counsel they notified the court on or about October 4th that they would need to. Thank you. I knew I'd read it. Yeah, back in October, they said we're going to need 2 weeks to present our case. I knew that had come out. I knew it had come out somewhere. But she's now saying that the court has no record of that communication or any recall of such communication. So, if she's claiming that there's no record of it, how do I have in my brain that that's what was stated? How do I have in my brain? Where did that come from? Exactly, Marie. It would have been easier to have a hearing on all the ordinary stuff to see if it's a viable defence. Yeah, it's got to be a viable defence. Like that's the stipulation that, the defence can't come along and just start blaming people randomly. There has to be they have to put a case forward as to why this particular person is the suspect rather than the accused. They can't just willy-nilly start blaming people. They have to put a case forward. But all of that case that's been put forward has been done in those Franks motions. The fact that she hasn't read them is very telling, that she doesn't think that there's an issue here. She doesn't think that there's a problem. She doesn't think that they have a viable defense because she hasn't read. She hasn't read the stuff that we've seen that's been out there since September. I'm convinced she hasn't read any of it. Thank you, Cynthia. I knew I'd read it. Rosie also said it would take 3 weeks or more in early filing. I'm sure I've read it. I can't with this woman. So she's stating that Rosie said it to her on October 4th. Or they said it to her on October 4th, and she's denying it. I hope that Brad and Andy go back and count the number of times that they've mentioned it. Counsel's assertion that between all defence counsel with a combined 70 years of experience, not one time have they been told that a trial would absolutely end on a certain day and not go any longer. That's irrational and unreasonable. The court is aware its colleagues across the state routinely give trial dates to begin on a set date and end on a set date. It's not my experience. I've never seen a trial where, they get to the end date and they say, right, you got to stop now. That's it, done. You got to stop now. I've never seen that. Never. Not in my country, and I've never seen it happen in a trial in the United States. Yeah, they set, obviously, they have a start date. Obviously, they have a start date. They might have an expected end date, but if it goes longer, then everybody deals with it. Right. I was a jury member on a murder trial here in the UK back in 2020. And they set the trial for 2 weeks. But the judge said to us, like, even before we were, the final selection was done, he said, we've set this for 2 weeks, but we are aware, as with, any, murder case, or it could go longer. He said, so I want to warn you that it could go longer. So if anybody has a problem with that, if anybody's going to, work or family or whatever, then tell me now. And basically, we won't select you, basically. And it did. It went 3 weeks. It went 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks. It did a whole extra week. So the court just had to deal with it. Because that's what happens. They can set an expected time, but things happen. I mean, we ended up being sent home early one day because there was no water in the building. Like, they couldn't flush toilets or anything, or wash your hands. And it was just as COVID was ramping up. Like, it was end of February into early March. I think we finished like 2 weeks before the national lockdown. So people were aware of COVID, with the hand sanitizer and all that stuff. So not being able to wash your hands was a bit of a problem. So they sent us home. But apart from that one day, everything else was delays by the court because, they had like sidebars and stuff. So that's what happens, and it's routine. So to say, yeah, we have an expected end date, but don't be surprised if it goes longer, that's routine. There's nowhere. I'm not aware of a trial that stops dead on a certain date. And what and what are the jury to do? Like, does the end date include the jury deliberations as well? Because, are the jury given a set time that they're allowed in deliberations? I mean, they've never mentioned that. But how does that work in her worldview? How does it work when, a jury could take an hour or they could take a week? And the jury should have as much time as they need. So what does she do with the jury? If she's saying that we're going to end on this date and we've told the jury they're going to end on this date, well, that surely then means that the jury think that they're done and dusted on May 31st and they can just go home. Well, what happens if they've not deliberated yet? It's crazy. It's insane. It's actually insane. I think the only person who actually wants to do jury duty. No, I always wanted to do jury duty. I was like screaming with excitement when the letter came. I want to do it again. I'm dying to do it again. I loved it. Is it not unlawful? I don't know. But it seems that she thinks that that's standard practice. The court is not required to guarantee equal time for both the defence and the state. Well, that's true. The court isn't required to guarantee it, but they should be allowed it. If she says, right, the trial must be done and dusted in 2 weeks, well, if Nick McClelland took that whole 2 weeks, then the defence would have no time to present anything, and she would say, well, I'm not guaranteeing you equal time, so therefore, tough shit. The court is required to guarantee sufficient time on the calendar and sufficient notice to jurors that the parties present their case, however long it takes. Well, if that's what the jury has been told, when they get the letter, then fine. All they need to do is say to the jury, right, we've scheduled this to, provisionally end on May 31st. But anybody who is going to have a problem going longer, bearing in mind that we're not going to just stop the trial dead if it goes longer, you tell us now, like the judge did in my case. Tell us now if you're going to have a problem staying longer. And then she can't say how long that they're going to deliberate for. So she's got to say that it may go longer, because you've got to factor in the possibility that a jury might take a week to reach a verdict. She makes her own flaming rules up here. She makes her own rules up. Had counsel notified the court within days of receiving the March the 7th court order setting the case for speedy trial May 13th to 31st, then the time allotted on the calendar was insufficient. The court would have immediately rectified the situation and extended the trial from May 13th to June 14th. The trial is now set for October 14th to November 15th, as requested by the defendant. So even now she's saying, all right, I'm giving you a bit more time, but then it's got to be done and dusted by November 15th. So again, we're in the same situation, or we will be in October, as to what happens if it goes longer. Does she just cut it off? It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Counsel accused the court of engaging in extrajudicial activity. Now, this, to me, I think this was a reach by the defence. I think I agree with her here. This is a reach. Counsel is correct that on July 9th, 2023, the court commented on a Facebook post about a softball tournament her granddaughter participated in Delphi. The court did not attend the tournament, but did say congratulations to her former daughter-in-law's post about their team winning the tournament. If counsel's allegation in this part of their motion are well-founded regarding a potential witness' alleged social media activities and are presented to the court for ruling, the court will rule accordingly. Concerns about anticipatory rulings are not reasonable. Okay. The fact that she said congratulations to her granddaughter on Facebook, I don't have a problem with it. I think they're reaching on that one, but everything else is just insane. Defendant asserts the court has denied reasonable requests for funding. This is incorrect. Counsel is well aware of the amount of funds the court has authorised for the defendant. The court has requested the defendant submit proper invoices and bills for Carroll County taxpayer funding. Invoices which have been submitted without appropriate documentation have been returned. So once again, she's blaming them. The bill counsel refers to for $26,000 for investigative services from June 4th through October 16th, 2023, was in fact returned to counsel, so as no documentation was provided for services. No documentation was submitted until quite recently. With that proper support and documentation, the court authorised the invoice for payment on May 17th. All right, so she's blaming them for not sending correct invoices. Well, we don't know whether that's true or not. However, has Brad Rosie now been paid? Because Brad Rosie and Andrew Baldwin were claiming that she was very slow in paying them. And up to the point, it's relatively recently, Brad Rosie had still not been paid. So had he been submitting his, request for payment wrongly? I mean, I don't know. That's one word against another. She is like a dictator. She is. So Bob thinks the FB thing is a big problem. Okay, I'll go and watch. I haven't watched Defense Diaries, like their latest thing. I haven't watched it. To me personally, it's I don't think saying congratulations to someone. I mean, if it goes beyond that, the fact that this is the victim's family is involved in it and so on and so forth, yeah, that's a problem. But just saying congratulations on Facebook, just on the face of it, I think it's a reach. But I'll go and listen to what Bob said about it. Rosie has not been paid in months. Exactly. That's true. This is concerning. Thank you, Jeremiah. This is concerning an invoice for things already purchased. But what they need is funds for experts, which she has been denying. She's been denying their requests to get funding for experts that they need. That's why David Hennessy has been crowdfunding. I mean, they've been crowdfunding to get enough money to pay experts that they need for their defence. Defendant further claims the court has refused to order the state to comply with discovery rules. The court has set defendant's motion to compel and motion for sanction for hearing, which has been continued due to this filing of this motion to disqualify. The previous defence motion to compel was denied without hearing, as it was unsupported with evidence. Well, what about all the other things that have been denied without hearing? What about the franks? 136 pages that we saw, plus all of the exhibits that aren't in the public domain. Is that sufficient evidence to allow for a hearing? Well, she denied that without a hearing. So how much evidence do they actually need? They can't win, can they? Defence counsel alleged bias by the court, only allowing cameras in the courtroom on one occasion. But which occasion was it? Which occasion was it? It was the occasion where she knew she was going to disqualify them for all the world to see. The court has not allowed cameras in the Carroll Circuit Court due to its limited size and layout. That's a lie. It's a cop-out. In the Karen Reid trial, there's cameras in that courtroom, and it's a tiny courtroom. You can see how small it is. They're all squashed together. Tiny courtroom, and there's cameras in there, and it's not been a problem. You know, it's not. They've been able to position the camera so that the jury's not on camera, and the size of the courtroom is irrelevant. The size of the courtroom is irrelevant. I mean, if she's got a concern about having the press in there, why doesn't Carroll Circuit Court have a setup like they have in Idaho? You know, Judge in the Coburg case, he had concerns about, the pool camera, like Court TV and whatever, setting up their own cameras and then zooming in on Brian Coburger's face. He had a problem with that. The defence had a problem with that. The prosecution had a problem with that. But what Judge did was find a happy medium. And he said, look, I'm not going to allow the pool camera, but we're going to stream it to YouTube via our own camera. So they set up a live feed. And they actually have 3 different cameras. One on the judge, one on the witness, and then one on the room, which includes like Coburger and anybody speaking. That's a happy medium. The quality's not as good. And it's a fixed camera. They can't zoom or anything like that. The mic audio's not as good. But it's fantastic that Judge said, look, not going to allow the pool camera. However, I want the justice in this case to be done in the light. I want this. Carroll County did on-camera hearings during COVID. They are able to stream it. Of course they are. And even if they weren't, it's relatively straightforward to set up a camera that will stream to YouTube or to wherever they want it to stream to. So, Judge has his own YouTube channel. They set up a YouTube channel and the hearings stream directly onto the YouTube channel. And they've said that anybody can restream. So he's not going to copyright strike people for streaming off his YouTube channel. So all the Court TV and Law and Crime, they all stream off Judge's YouTube channel. It's all fine. That's a happy medium. So there's no reason why she can't do that. There's no reason. If she doesn't want 3 cameras, have 1 camera. If she doesn't want cameras, have audio. It's even easier to set up a microphone that will record, and then they can stream that out. It's even easier. There's no reason why she cannot allow cameras. She doesn't want cameras because she wants injustice to be done in the dark. And nothing will persuade me otherwise. Nothing will persuade me otherwise. So to say that because the Carroll County courtroom is too small is nonsense. Is nonsense. The court did allow cameras in the Allen Superior Court at the hearing conducted on October 19th. Well, what about the other hearings that have taken place in Allen Superior Court? Because there's more than one hearing that has been held in Allen Court. So what about them? She's just lying. The hearing was not conducted and the media outlet providing pool coverage did not comply. with the court's directives regarding coverage and broadcasting of the proceedings. The court lost confidence in the ability of the media to cover hearings appropriately. Well, if you lost confidence in the ability of the media to cover it, why don't you have a word with Judge in Idaho? Because he wasn't happy with, the media zooming in on Koberger's face. But he didn't say, oh, I've lost confidence in you, therefore I'm going to do all this in the dark. No, he said, I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to stream it onto my YouTube, so I've got control. Good judge. The court has issued adverse rulings against the defendant as well as against the state of Indiana. Adverse rulings do not support a reasonable basis for questioning the court's impartiality, nor are the grounds for disqualification. They are just adverse rulings. Defendant's second verified motion to disqualify judge and request for finding of fact and conclusions of law upon denial of this request, if this court denies the request, is denied. That's right. The camera can be your best friend or your worst enemy. What it does do, it keeps everybody accountable. And accountability, well, can be bad if you're up to no good, can't it? So we've got to wait and see now to see what the defence does. The defence has a problem now, because they know full well that she's being biased. They know full well. We can all see it. So what are they going to do? What's going to happen? Keeps things honest. It does. Absolutely keeps things honest. So we're going to wait and see what the defence comes back with. I honestly don't know what they can do. Back to the Supreme Court. I don't know how well that will be received, though, by the Supreme Court. That's the issue. Because they're going to have to put a very, very good case together for the Supreme Court to be interested. I don't know. I really don't. The ultimately, though, the people suffering here are Abby and Libby and their families. Those are the people that are suffering. I mean, Richard Allen, of course, is suffering. But when justice is delayed, justice is denied. And this is a case where there's injustice after injustice after injustice. And we're no further forward. I feel that justice is so far away in this case. It's so sad. Yeah, inflated ego. Exactly, yeah. Inflated ego is taking up the entire courtroom. Yeah, there isn't room for a camera because her head is too big. Like she's just like her presence. The Supreme Court only said they hadn't provided evidence in law that the judge was biased. I think maybe there was a pointer to do so in the future if they had to bring the case back to them. Yeah. Maybe that's where they'll go. Maybe it is. Because, there's plenty of defense attorneys in Indiana who are watching this. They're watching this very closely because this could be anybody in the future. This is Richard Allen today, Richard Allen's families, and Abby and Libby's families today, but it could be anybody's family. It could be anybody's case tomorrow. So the defense counsel in Indiana, they're all watching. The world is watching. Everybody's watching. So maybe they will. And obviously that's going to delay the process even longer. But if that's what they've got to do, then I hope they do it. If they can do that well, I hope they do. Anyhow, I'm going to go. So in 10 minutes' time, there is another live stream on the Sebastian Rogers case. Once I end this live, it should redirect you to the waiting room of that live stream. If it doesn't, if I've set it up wrong, then it's on the channel anyway as an upcoming live stream. So I'm going to go for now. I'm going to see you in 10 minutes if you're interested in the Sebastian Rogers case. So bye for now. Thanks, everyone. Welcome to the new members. Thank you to those that donated. And thanks to the mods. And I'm going to see you in 10 minutes. Bye, guys.